There's a difference between choosing something because it genuinely brings you joy and choosing something because you're afraid of what happens if you stop. And I think many of us, especially as women, have been conditioned not to question that line too closely. We're meant to shut up and look pretty. And today's episode is a very honest conversation about beauty, insecurity, self-worth, aging, the nervous system, and the complicated relationship that many of us have with the reflection staring back at us in the mirror. Because as of this week, I have officially gone 1 full year without Botox, or technically Daxify, but we'll get into all of that. And while this episode does talk about cosmetic procedures and my personal experience working in the beauty industry for so many years, this conversation is about so much more than injections. It's about the true cost of beauty, the emotional cost, the financial cost, the mental energy, the comparison, the upkeep, the stories we create about our worth. It's about what happens when you interrupt an automatic cycle and sit in the discomfort long enough to actually ask yourself, why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? And what would it look like to make beauty decisions from a place of wholeness instead of fear or lack? I share very openly in this episode about my own journey with injections, the intense insecurity that I've been experiencing lately, the ways my fertility and health journey has shifted my perspective, and the deeper healing around learning to actually receive my own beauty without shrinking from it. And I want to say this clearly before we begin. This is not an anti-Botox episode. This is not a judgment of anyone who gets cosmetic treatments. I always say that when I have these types of discussions and episodes, and I'll continue to say it. And I may absolutely choose to get Daxify again in the future. This episode is about conscious confidence, about reclaiming sovereignty over our choices, about becoming intentional with the rituals, habits, and narratives that we participate in, and about learning how to love ourselves with or without the things that we once thought we needed. So whether you've never touched a cosmetic procedure in your life, or you've been getting Botox for years, whether you feel deeply confident right now, or are also quietly struggling with your own reflection in the mirror, I hope that this conversation makes you feel more informed and more in your own power. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's get into it. Welcome back to the Self-Care Sermon Podcast. I'm your host, Coco, and this is your sanctuary where we discuss self-love and self-care practices meant to amplify your authentic radiance. After working in the beauty industry for over 20 years as a certified makeup artist and licensed esthetician, and later becoming certified as an Ayurvedic health instructor, I take a holistic view on self-care. I want to empower you to release the pressures surrounding the endless and unfulfilling search of how to be outwardly beautiful, and instead I want to inspire you to create a life that is full of beauty. Okay, I have officially gone 1 full year without getting Botox, which is why I am trying for the first time ever to do a video version of the podcast so that you can visually experience this episode as I'm talking about it. And I think going on video for this episode is so perfect for today with the themes that we're talking about, because there was a time not that long ago where if you would have told me that I have a podcast and I was putting my voice online out for the public, never would have believed you. If you then would have told me that I'm going to be doing this on video and putting it on Spotify and YouTube in a video format, not a chance. And the fact that I'm doing this on video, recording a podcast, putting it out there on YouTube in a state where I do feel some insecurity, which we'll talk about in this episode. And in a state where I am just able to show up today as I am, I don't know what I'm doing. Normally, I would be much more researched with how to do the video podcasting and how to figure out my neon sign, how to get it to show up on the video behind me, and all of these things. But the whole point of this episode is just embracing where we're at and showing up as we are. And so it just feels really, really perfect today to be doing this episode in this way. So before I jump into this episode, I think it would be good just to level set and help create a framework of understanding for what Botox is. And while I'll be using the term Botox throughout this episode most frequently, I actually technically have not gotten Botox in many years. I use a newer product called Daxxify. But since Botox is the most easily identifiable name for a neuromodulator, I'm going to keep using it for simplicity. So, Botox and Daxxify are both neuromodulators. Other neuromodulators are Dysport and Xeomin, but they're different names of essentially this same product made by different manufacturers. And yes, I have tried all of them over the years. Neuromodulators refer to a category of injections that are used to treat wrinkles. Essentially, when the neurotoxin is injected, it blocks the nerve signals that then prevent certain muscles from contracting, which can smooth out the overlying skin and also prevent wrinkles from forming or the deepening of existing wrinkles. So instead of thinking about it as freezing the muscles, which I've heard people say and talk about, and there are certainly some mainstream celebrities who have that frozen appearance, a better descriptor would be that the neurotoxins help to relax the muscles. And Botox is the OG of neurotoxins. It actually started out as a medical treatment in the 70s to treat eye twitching originally. And it wasn't until the early 2000s, fairly new, that Botox became FDA approved for cosmetic use. No matter which neurotoxin you use, the appointment itself is usually really quick, about 15 minutes, 30 minutes at most. The number of units needed for a person will vary from person to person, depending on the product, depending on how many areas are being treated, what your starting point is, and what your goals are. Very generally speaking, the FDA approved dosing for Botox is 64 units. So it's about 20 for the horizontal forehead lines, 24 for the lines around the eyes, and then 20 units for between the brows. Daxxify is roughly double that. 2 Daxxify units are equivalent to 1 Botox unit. Daxxify, being one of the newer neuromodulators on the market, uses a peptide technology, which makes it slightly different from Botox. So where Botox is done every 3 to 4 months, same with Xeomin and Dysport, Daxxify lasts about 6 to 9 months. Now, for me, Botox stopped working about 6-ish years ago. I could maybe get a month of correction out of it before all of my movement returned. And this can happen for a number of reasons. One reason, although it's rare, is that our body can develop antibodies to Botox, which will prevent it from working. And I do think that was a contributing factor in my case. But another factor can be if you live a really active lifestyle. Frequent exercise can cause the Botox to metabolize faster, meaning that our body will break it down and eliminate it much quicker. So that was why I initially made the switch from Botox to Daxxify. I also find that the wear-off period for Daxxify is much softer than Botox. When my Botox wears off, it feels really sudden and dramatic, Whereas with Dax, I feel like my lines and my movement come back more gradually and a lot softer. I definitely do not get the 6 to 9 month lifespan with it. That is common for most people, which is a bummer, but still longer than I was getting with Botox. Other questions that I get asked are, does it hurt? The needle itself is very small and fine. It is a needle poke, so there is some discomfort associated with it, sure. And if you have a thing with needles, there's no getting around that. But it is pretty mild and the appointment is so quick. The least fun areas are the lips and the bunny lines on the sides of the nose. 10 out of 10 times, those areas will get my eyes watering. Now, when I'm talking about getting Botox for my lips, something that I want to point out is that is not the same as filler. Filler is an injection, typically of hyaluronic acid, but not always, that adds volume and structure to your lips. So think of Kylie Jenner. It is filling the lips with a product to make them appear bigger, more voluminous or shapely, or to help with symmetry. Botox for the lips works much differently. By now, many of you may have heard of the Botox lip flip, which is much more mainstream and popular in recent years. And when Botox is injected into the muscles just above the upper lip, remember that it has that relaxing mechanism. So for me, I've always been pretty happy with the size and the shape of my lips. I'm not necessarily looking for more volume or enhanced size, but when I smile, my upper lip has a tendency to fold under, making it appear smaller. So when I have Botox injected in my upper lip, it relaxes those muscles so that when I smile, that upper lip stays flipped out. It's a little bit more pouty. It's a little bit more visible. So I like that for pictures when I'm smiling. But I will say that the Botox lip flip is definitely not for everybody. I will caution you that if you do a Botox lip flip, it can create some functional challenges because that upper lip is relaxed. So, for example, when I have Botox in my upper lip and say I'm trying to mouthwash, usually I have to hang my face over the sink because I can't keep the liquid in my mouth because it'll trickle out because that upper lip is so relaxed. So be thinking of that with soup or drinking out of a straw. It can get a little weird and all you can do is wait for it to wear off. So keep that in mind if you are considering a Botox lip flip. Most neuromodulators take about 14 full days for full effect. You might start seeing it sooner, especially with Daxify, but really it's a full 14 days before you want to make any decisions of if you need more or need something modified. For the first 24 hours, you'll be asked not to exercise. I'll usually also just be mindful when I'm doing yoga practice to not have any inversions where I'm hanging with my head below my heart, like in a downward dog. You really just want the product to settle into the muscles without moving all around with vigorous exercise. There are, of course, risks with any of these cosmetic procedures. I would say most notably is going to be bruising or redness or swelling at the injection site. It's a needle poke, so that could happen. There is a risk of having a brow drop where your brow or your eye can become more droopy or heavy rather than raised. There can also be some unevenness or lopsidedness or asymmetry. So risks are involved. My advice is just do your research on your provider. When doing any types of procedures like this, I don't advise looking for the lowest cost option. You're going to want to invest in a trusted practice with skilled practitioners who are participating in ongoing training, who are well reputed and reviewed. and who have partnerships with these companies like Botox or Daxify, the manufacturers, you can look on those different websites, and a lot of times they'll have like find a provider near me. So just be looking at those things. If you are in the greater Seattle area, honestly, just anywhere kind of in Washington state, I could probably direct you pretty well if you're curious. I can steer you towards some really trusted injectors because with Botox, if something gets weird or off, yes, they can inject more to try and correct any issues or even things out. But you honestly kind of just need to wait a few months until it wears off. So you don't want to shortcut the process. If there is anything I'm forgetting to mention or more questions that you guys might have, please feel free to text me through the link in the show notes or send me a DM on Instagram at the Self Care Sermon. I am always happy to help if and where I can. So now that we have the Botox basics, a little more on my own path with it. I first got Botox when I was 21 or 22 at the first medical spa that I worked at after esthetician school. And I was the skin consultant there. So I was the first stop for all new patients who came in, and we would discuss any concerns for the face or the body, and I would create a thorough, detailed treatment plan for you, from your least invasive options to the most advanced options. And because I was this first line of education for patients, it was important that I had experienced all of our different treatments so that I could speak to them with integrity and a true understanding. So I have done pretty much all of the things over the years, and I am always very open about anything that I've had done and always happy to share my experience or any information that I can without any judgment for anyone curious. I honestly think this is something that is so terribly lacking in our society. So many women gatekeep the procedures that they do rather than just being open and honest about them. And I think it amplifies the comparison culture that's already so hard to escape. We compare our skin and our hair and our face and our body to someone who has spent tens of thousands of dollars on lasers and fillers and extensions and body contouring. I think it contributes to the very unrealistic beauty standard that women are held to. And the secrecy around these procedures can also just create an energy of shame around these services. So I just think they need to be discussed. Let's share our experiences. Let's share resources. Let's take the power back in the decision to do these things. And this is really why I am so passionate about the concept of conscious confidence that I talk about on this podcast. It's about being intentional with the why behind our desires to do the procedures that we do. No shame, no embarrassment. Just be honest with yourself why you want to do the thing you're doing. Have the awareness and the sovereignty in getting our beauty rituals done, rather than just subscribing to the patriarchal narrative that women need to have all of these things done to be considered beautiful or worthwhile. We need to change the anti-aging narrative. Why are we anti-aging in the first place? It is the most natural and inevitable part of life. And why doesn't this pressure and scrutiny apply to men? Why do women carry the burden of reversing time and making that look effortless? It's so wild and it's so frustrating. And my hope with this podcast is that we peel back the curtain on the beauty industry and look at true, sustainable, intentional self-care from a wholly self-loving place. But going back to when I first started with Botox, like I said, I was in my early 20s, and we actually ended up using my before and after pictures for all of the consultations that we did. My photos were hung up in the room where I did all of the patient consultations, because the most common initial reaction from people when I told them that I had Botox was, "You're so young." And yes, I was. But as I would share with them, it was really used as a preventative measure. So, as shown in my before picture, even in my early 20s, I had deeper forehead lines already formed, even when my face was at rest and not expressing. I am a very expressive person, so those facial muscles were hard at work, and there are also genetic factors at play. I also have drier skin, which tends to wrinkle more easily than someone who has oilier skin. So, to all of my oily skin girlies who come in to see me for makeup application and complain about having oily skin, I would always tell them how lucky they are because you aren't going to wrinkle as quickly or as easily. There is a blessing in oily skin for sure. And so I started Botox very early to help prevent the deepening of the wrinkles that I already had forming in my early 20s. And then that just became my norm. I worked in the industry up until I was 31. So a decade of Botox or Dysport or Xeomin or Daxify every 3 to 4 months for 10 plus years. Even when I was unemployed, when I lost my job with Chopra Global, I still scrounged up enough money to find a way to get my Botox. But with this idea of conscious confidence that I love so much, I talk about the need to intentionally examine the things that we do in our lives on a fairly regular basis. Do value check ins every once in a while. Take inventory of the practices and habits and behaviors in our lives, and then decide if they're still feeling in alignment or not. And to be honest, I was starting to be on the fence and questioning my Daxify treatments over the last couple of years. To be a holistic esthetician, an Ayurvedic health coach, I started to wonder if getting Botox was still in integrity and alignment with my beliefs. So I ran a little experiment and I said I would pause on getting my Daxify refill after it wore off. Now, I always aim to be completely open and honest on this podcast. I want to only show up in my truth and share it as authentically as possible. So when I decided to do this little experiment, I did not set out to do it for a year initially. I thought maybe I'll push it to 6 months. Thinking that was already a crazy stretch, since again, Daxify for me only lasts really nicely for about 2 months, but I can squeak out maybe 3 or 4. But let's just see if I can do it. And I even had my appointment to re-up scheduled. And at month 4, I was starting to feel pretty itchy. I was pretty uncomfortable and self-conscious. And if you have listened to any of my recent podcast episodes, you'll know that this last year plus has been pretty challenging. And I was already greatly struggling with my reflection in the mirror, really battling insecurity and low self-esteem. And so I wasn't loving seeing the movement and the lines starting to show back in my forehead. That's my main area of concern, the horizontal lines on my forehead. If you're watching this on video, I'm raising my brows to emphasize the lines that I'm talking about. That's my most expressive and noticeable place. And so I was wearing beanies and hats to cover my forehead as often as possible. I was trying different things with my makeup. I even strongly considered getting bangs to help cover my forehead, but thankfully I did not. I've been down that road before and just bangs are not my path. But just painting the picture for you, to be honest, you guys, I did not like the way that I looked without Botox. I didn't like the way that my makeup on my forehead was sitting. I was super self-conscious in photos. I genuinely felt like the only thing that people saw when they looked at me was how wrinkly my forehead was, and that they were thinking like, wow, she's really let herself go, because a lot of people in my life have seen me for so long with a smooth, soft forehead. And so with everything that I've been dealing with the past couple of years, I just kept thinking, oh my God, people are just looking at me and thinking she's really let herself go. Like, all of this stuff has happened and she's just given up. And I know that this probably sounds insane, but that's truly how I felt. Super self-conscious. I would see other women who I know have Botox. I've been around it long enough to know it when I see it, I can spot it. And I would really painfully compare myself to them. It even felt like unfair in a way, even though this was my choice and totally self-inflicted. I had this sense of unfairness. Like, wow, they get to do this service and feel beautiful, and they're probably looking down on me because my forehead's wrinkly. And if they only knew that I used to look like that, smooth like them, and I'm doing this as a conscious choice, then that would be better. I felt like I needed to explain or justify that I am aware of my less attractiveness right now, and it's intentional and purposeful. Just super wackadoodle crazy thoughts like that I was having all of the time. And again, as some of you regular listeners might know, I have been through quite a health journey the last couple of years. It has had a major impact on my time and my finances and my mental health. And interestingly enough, while that made my desire to do something to make me feel beautiful even stronger, because of all the medication and supplement changes and the IUD removal and everything that's been making my skin break out and just be weird, it also made me less interested in using my money towards something like Botox. It was this weird paradox. Having paid so much in medical bills and feeling really out of control in that area of my life, it made me want to be much more intentional and conscious with my money in the spaces that I could control. So the question started to evolve from, should I get Botox from an aesthetic standpoint, to, is this really what I want hundreds of my dollars to go towards right now? Or would I rather spend this $800+ on something that would fill my cup? One of the main goals of this podcast is to talk about the things that make us feel beautiful, full of beauty from the inside out, rather than just beautiful, that word that can be weaponized in our psyche. And so I started to think about how many more beautiful activities I could invest in with the $800+ that are more sustainable and have more longevity than something I'm going to need to do again in a few months' time, over and over and over again for the rest of my life. And for what? I started to really question, what is the cost of beauty? Not just the financial cost. The cost is so much more than money. It's the time investment. It's the mental anguish. It is the never-ending upkeep of consumerism, the comparison, the 20-step skincare routine. I keep seeing these influencers who film their morning routine, and it's just full of like 50 products and tools from Amazon that they earn commission on and convince you that you need to have. And it's just so unrealistic. And as I was exploring this question about the true cost of beauty, I was reminded of the evolution of my relationship to makeup over the years. As some of you might know, I started doing makeup professionally when I was about 13 years old, doing makeup for school plays and performances. I trained with and then worked for MAC Cosmetics for many, many years. And there was a time in my life where I would not go to the grocery store without a set of fake lashes on. And one of my episodes of this podcast, I actually think it's the Conscious Confidence episode, one of my very first, where I detail the experience of moving in with my boyfriend and sitting on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded on all sides by bags and boxes and boxes and boxes of makeup that I'd collected over the years. A lot of it wasn't even makeup I would wear or use again, but it had special sentimental meaning to me. I was a collector of all of these beautiful products throughout all of my years of doing makeup. And so here I am sitting on the floor in a sea of beauty products, bawling because I recognized that I was at a transition point in my life where I didn't need those things anymore. That my definition of beauty had evolved with my healing over time. That once I had truly discovered what it meant to genuinely and fully love myself, that I could show up as I was, enough, whole, worthy, without an attachment to a collection of beautiful and luxurious makeup products, just things. I could carry the energy and the essence of those memories, of those cherished times in my life, of my love of creativity and beauty and makeup and connecting with women and making them feel beautiful and seen and radiant. I could carry that forward without all of the clutter of the products. One of the biggest realizations during that time period was also that I no longer wanted to invest so much time in getting ready. Now, I am still a beauty girl through and through, and I love a good night out with my man or my girls. And any of my friends listening will 1000% vouch for this, that my request on one of those glam nights out is 3 hours of getting ready. At least. Pour some bubbles, blast some music. Just a full, lengthy, head to toe glam session is so much fun to me. But now that only happens on the rarest of occasions rather than a regular occurrence. And my daily glam is far more basic. What you're seeing today, I worked my full other job all day today, came home and just started recording the podcast. And on the weekends, when I'm not at work, I really just prefer some tinted sunscreen, some mascara, some brow gel, and I go about my day. And it's not because I care less about my appearance now than I did before, but it's because I reevaluated the cost of the time that it took. I would so much rather meditate and journal and do yoga in the time that it typically would have taken me just to get ready for the day. And on the weekends, I would rather go for a walk in nature first thing in the morning and just connect with the sun and my surroundings and my environment than be spending that amount of time getting ready. And so I started to have these same questions and conversations with myself about Botox. I have spent so much time in appointments the last couple of years. Any of my work PTO in the last 2 years literally has been used because of doctor's appointments. None of it, none of my PTO has been used for pleasure. And so, do I really want to have another appointment? So, like I said, I had canceled the one that I had made initially to get my Daxify refilled. And I said I would revisit again the next month. And the next month, I was still insecure about my wrinkly forehead. I was still self-conscious. I was still comparing myself to other women, still embarrassed about my appearance, still creating stories in my head that I had let myself go and that everybody thought so. And yet, still, the time and money cost of Botox felt too great. And so I have done that assessment month after month after month until now a full year has passed without any injections. And just speaking of the doctor's appointments over the last couple of years, the other really interesting piece of this journey, another paradox within this, has been running this Botox experiment parallel to my fertility journey, which I talked about on episode 96. Because going back to that question of what is the true cost of beauty? When I really had to start looking at what was within my control with my fertility, the main thing that I could focus on was the quality of the existing eggs that I have. I couldn't necessarily change the quantity, but I could focus on the quality, which has made me completely overhaul so many things in my life the last couple of years. So much research and deep dives, and all of this will come through in my practice and in the podcast and things that I'm working on behind the scenes. But hair and skin and body care products, makeup and food and beverages, and yes, further question Botox. I have asked myself, if I were acting as if I were pregnant right now, what are the things that I'm allowed to have or not allowed to have? And maybe, just maybe, that should tell me something about the health and safety of some of these things that have just been my norm for so long. And while I wish that I could sit here heroically and say that I am now the model spokeswoman for self-love and a no Botox movement, I can't. I'm not. I'm still looking at myself on camera here and watching my forehead move, and grateful that you can't truly see how wrinkly it is on camera, on video. The truth is, in really practicing what I preach in a whole new way, in really living into conscious confidence in terms of my relationship to Botox, I'm just allowing myself to sit in this discomfort for a moment without injecting it away. With or without Botox, my self-esteem has struggled so greatly in the last few years. And so I know that from that place, it's going to be difficult to make self-loving decisions. So I can't really say if I would be getting Botox from an intentional and sovereign and consciously confident place, or if I'm doing it to band-aid over this wound of unworthiness and insecurity that I've been feeling for a while. And as I sit here before you today, I can wholeheartedly, absolutely tell you that I do prefer the way that I look with my Daxify. I do. It's not because I'm not trying to age. It's not because I think wrinkles are bad or ugly, but I have seen myself, my face, my reflection, my photos a certain way for a decade or more. I've become used to the way that my makeup goes on and wears throughout the day. And I genuinely like that softness and radiance that I get from being injected with Daxify. And so I might choose to make an appointment for that service in the next few months. And maybe I explore getting it once a year from now on instead of every few months like I used to. Who knows? The point is, I interrupted the cycle. I called timeout. I explored my values more closely, and I did an inventory assessment of my time, my money, and my choices. I am sitting with the discomfort of insecurity, not rushing to fix a perceived physical flaw, just noticing it. And in doing this, if and when I decide to make the choice to get Daxify again, it will be from a conscious and whole and self-loving place, intentionally choosing how I want to allocate my money and my time, knowing it's not a need, but a want, and then being okay and comfortable with that decision. The deeper layer that has also unfolded throughout this process is recognizing the ways in which my physical trauma and abuse history has factored into all of this. Through these recent years of insecurity and low self-esteem, it's made it much more obvious to me the ways in which I haven't ever really fully claimed my inherent beauty, the beauty that we all possess. I've spoken on the podcast before about intentionally receiving and noticing the good, receiving a compliment, receiving a gift, receiving beauty through all of your senses. And I have struggled for many, many years with receiving my own beauty. I minimize myself. I downplay. I shrink. I diminish. I make myself smaller. I still hide in so many ways. Many of you know I went offline. I went underground, as I call it, for 10 years after an abusive relationship. I was terrified to be anywhere searchable in the public eye. And even though I've made leaps and bounds, here I am on a video podcast. Never in a million years would I have thought. I still hide in so many ways. And I've realized that so much of that is because it often still feels really scary to put myself out there. Truly, like, frightening. I fear for my safety. There are sexual predators in positions of power who have used their money and their influence to prey on the vulnerable. My nervous system hasn't felt safe in a really, really long time to just fully express who I am through clothes or hair or makeup or my physical expression. Attention feels risky and unsafe. I was on my daily walk the other day. And I had gotten home from work and I just changed into my cozies, same thing I do every day when I get home from work, sweatpants and a t-shirt or something. And I went on my walk. And a man in a van pulled up alongside me. I was walking along a busy 3-lane street and he rolled down his passenger window and was trying to wave and talk to me and call to me and get me to stop. And he started to hold up traffic behind him. I slowed down and so did he. And a little ways up, because he had to kind of keep scooting forward because cars were piling up behind him, he literally just turned on his hazards and stopped, and cars were honking and having to go in the turn lane around him. But he was waiting for me to catch up to him as I was walking. And I was in the luteal phase of my cycle, the PMS phase. And for any of my fellow monthly bleeders listening or former monthly bleeders, I am sure you can relate to the absolutely feral, primal, boiling rage that started coursing through my being at this whole thing. I am just trying to take a walk after a long day at work on a sunny afternoon, and this fucking man thinks he can hold up traffic and wait for me in his van and call to me and flag me down, and that I'm actually going to respond to that. The PMS rage in me had the conscious thought of walking up to the van, meeting up with him, and thought if he tried anything in that moment, that I would be fully capable of clawing his eyeballs out of his skull. But thankfully, the PMS rage did not win over. My survival mechanism kicked in. The wiser me, much more geared to safety, just told me to turn around, go the opposite way, and lose him through a parking lot, which I did. But it's because of shit like that and my past that I still have trouble trusting that it's okay for me to fully embrace my inherent beauty, that each and every one of us holds as a unique facet of radiance in this world. And exploring that through therapy and through my practices has been such an integral part of the self-love evolution that I'm navigating in recent years. What does it mean to fully receive my unique beauty in every expression, wholly, fully, from the inside out? And how can I feel safe there? How can I teach my nervous system that it is nourishing and nurturing to do so, that it's divine, that it's devotional? And I don't have all of the answers figured out there. Hopefully, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know by now that I certainly do not claim to have all of the answers. I am actively walking this journey alongside you. Yes, I have learned a lot through my own experiences. I have seen a lot in many years in the beauty industry. I have been fortunate to learn from many incredible mentors and teachers along my path. And I'm just here to share, to maybe help shortcut you through some of the experiences and trials and tribulations that I've gone through. I'm here to witness you. I'm here to reflect life back to you in a way that is transparent and authentic and honest. And so while I don't have this whole receiving my beauty wound completely figured out or healed, there are some things that are helping me practice this. One of them is making it a non-negotiable point to look into my own eyes in the mirror at least once a day and saying, I love you, you're beautiful. I say it twice, looking into each eye one at a time and saying, I love you, you're beautiful. There's a saying that the eyes are the portal to the soul, and it's true. When we look into our own eyes and speak an affirmation, it is a direct path to our subconscious. We can help reprogram any narratives that we have been unconsciously running by consciously suggesting a different truth. Another way that I've been practicing navigating this season of insecurity and relearning self-love is by actively noticing and intentionally engaging with the comparison mind that comes up. So as an example of this, I took myself on a date this last weekend and I went to a farmer's market and a vintage village that I love to go to in the greater Seattle area where I live. And I walked past a girl who I started comparing myself to. Oh my gosh, her hair is so long and thick and beautiful. Her skin is so vibrant and radiant and clear. I love her outfit. She's so stylish and genuinely beautiful. And after initially observing her, I felt my energy downshift. I noticed that I started to crumple inwards a little bit. My energy contracted. I started feeling self-conscious and making myself smaller. I started inwardly critiquing my hair and my skin and the outfit I was wearing. And then I noticed that I was doing this. I noticed that I was starting to feel down and sad. And let me tell you, when you start to raise your awareness through practicing meditation or yoga or journaling or simple presence with nature, it is so powerful when you can notice these thought loops as they come up. When the once unconscious thoughts start to become conscious, that in itself is a reason to celebrate. So I noticed the thoughts that I was having about this woman and became aware of the way that it was shifting my energy. Here I am taking myself out on a date and I'm making my own self insecure. And once I noticed, I just allowed it space to breathe. I didn't punish myself or make myself feel worse or guilty or shameful for having the thoughts. I was compassionate with myself for having the thoughts, and then I celebrated myself for being conscious of them. I allowed space for the feelings to move, not suppress or bury or try and hurry to get rid of them. Then I took a moment to recognize this woman as a human being in the world, with her own struggles as a woman, her own internal narrative and stories, her own insecurities, her own personal journey with her appearance, her own thoughts getting ready this morning for the day. Noticing that she exists in the same comparison culture that I do, in the same patriarchal society, in the same time in history. And in doing that, in really trying to see her as a fellow sister walking this earthly realm with me, it immediately dampened the energy of comparison or competition. I was more connected in that moment to the oneness of us all. And I could really genuinely pour love into her in that moment. And mind you, all of this is happening as I'm continuing my walk through the market. It's not like I stopped and I'm staring at her processing all of this. I'm just reflecting and thinking as I'm walking. So once I became aware of the thoughts I was having and their impact on my energy, and once I viewed her as a beautiful human on her own journey through this life, then I asked myself, what is it specifically about her that I was comparing myself to? And are there any aspects that I can adopt in my life? Okay, her hair was really beautiful. Maybe I can practice some different hairstyles that would make me feel a bit better. I have the hair that I have. The frizz comes with the curls, the dryness from decades of coloring and heat styling. But I do many self-care practices specifically to care for my hair. So let's keep doing those. And maybe try a new way of curling my hair like hers was. Okay, and her skin. Number one, she appears much younger than me. Let's honor that. My skin looked different 10 years ago too. And also, we know I've had some skin struggles over the last year or so as I've been on this health journey. I know my skin has been doing its best to be resilient with all of the hormonal changes and medication and supplement changes, and I am doing everything that I can as a holistic esthetician to care for my skin. And what a gift that is, because it's such medicine for my purpose in the world. And then her outfit. Babe, that isn't even an outfit that you would wear. She was in low-rise jeans, for God's sake. Those days are long behind us. I did my time. So if it wasn't the exact outfit that I was comparing mine to, what was it? And I realized it was just the confidence that she was exuding in her own clothes. She wasn't shrinking. Her shoulders were back. She seemed confident. That's not something that I always feel. I've actually been reflecting on this lately. And because I went to private school, grades kindergarten through 12, I either wore a uniform or had a very strict dress code from ages 5 to 17. And then when I went to Wazoo and was trying to figure out who I was while also battling pretty severe depression, I really either just wore Wazoo clothes or my sorority gear for the brief time that I was there. And then in esthetician school, it was back to a super strict dress code. And then in my professional career in the beauty industry, I have most often worn scrubs or been fully remote. And so I'm realizing that I haven't spent a lot of time building a wardrobe that feels true to me, which segues into my next tip for cultivating self-love when the comparison and the insecurity creep in, which is channel the energy spent comparing yourself to someone else into creating a vision board for your own style and expression. I was comparing myself to the girl at the market, but I wouldn't have worn what she was wearing. So what could I wear? What outfits or styles appeal to me that would potentially make me feel that level of confidence in my clothes that she was exuding? I'll pin outfit inspo to my Pinterest board. I will save clothing items to my Nordstrom wish list. I will save looks that I see from influencers on Instagram that seem really cute. I just start imagining and experimenting and getting creative with my own personal style. It's such a better direction for my energy to flow rather than into comparing myself against another woman. Anytime that we are feeling that little twinge of jealousy or comparison or wanting to critique another person, get curious about what this is trying to show you. What can this teach you? What can I learn from this? How can I redirect this energy that I'm noticing into an energy of gratitude, admiration, and creativity? And lastly, you can go one step further and compliment the person that you were comparing yourself to. Later that day, I ended up walking past this same girl again later. And after I had already processed my feelings of insecurity, I told her how cute she looked. She's not my competition. I can come back to a place of wholeness in myself, even in the midst of insecurity, and recognize the wholeness in her and move from a place of collaborative oneness. I completely shifted the energy of my day by noticing, feeling, processing, and then integrating what was coming up for me. I don't get this right 100% of the time. And I am still relearning to embody an essence of self-love that has frankly suffered over the last few years. But it's these baby steps. It's these simple choices, intentional choices, one at a time, that move the needle, that disrupt the repetitive, often destructive thought loops in our head that run unchecked. It is a daily practice. This is what it is to live self-care holistically, to move from conscious confidence, to be intentionally self-loving. A message that has been repeatedly coming through for me lately is wholeness is not a destination. It is a repeated unfolding. Our job isn't to get it perfect, to be ascended masters. It's to keep practicing, to stay curious and devoted to our own unfolding. This is living a beautiful life. Some of you may be familiar with the CoStar app, and a while back I screenshot the message that it had given me for my daily overview, and I think it's perfect to end this episode with. It said, "Break up with your mirrors. The constant checking, comparing, and criticizing has turned your body into enemy territory. Put the sheets over the mirrors this week. Your worth isn't in that glass. Live in your skin instead of watching it from the outside." As always, I am so grateful for your presence with me, and I hope that my offering for you through this podcast is a nourishing act of self-care for each of you. Take what you need, share what you loved, and leave the rest. If you feel like offering a small gesture of kindness yourself in return, you can always rate and review the podcast. And remember to subscribe so that you're first to be notified when I release new weekly episodes. You can also find me on Instagram at The Self-Care Sermon. I look forward to talking to you again soon. With love, Coco.